it is vitally necessary to understand that there are two thinking systems. And when I say two thinking system, I'm really speaking about thinking. And we're not usually required to do this in our everyday life, in our social life, even our professional life or business life, even in government environments where laws are created and they have an impact on people in such a way that it is either destructive and death producing or it's constructive and life affirming. So I use as one of my tools the art of making distinction. And this tool is a method for assisting people to come out of dualistic thinking. Dualistic is an either or compartmentalized or binary thinking. And dual means adversarial, of course, like for and against, right and wrong, and good and bad. And so people can be in the situation where they don't know that they don't know that they're trapped and entrenched in a thinking system in which there's no co-creative solution, because the thinking in this thinking system that I call Eurocentric, dualistic, inverse thinking system. Let me define each word. Eurocentric specifically refers to the concept of hierarchy and patriarchy, which is prevalent in the historical colonial experience of indigenous people in terms of oppression. We call it external oppression, and that oppression is internalized and it becomes depression, and we become immobilized. And then there's a belief that there's no solution, but that's not correct. It's not true. And so this is the danger of Eurocentric, which is hierarchy, patriarchy, or hierarchy and matriarchy. That means that there's conquest and power over that's being valued, cherished, and perpetuated. And so that's Eurocentric. And then dualistic, I already described as either or. And then inverse, I'm referring to the belief that people are addicted to, that we think that we're born into a deficient self-image. And so when I use the word inverse, it's hidden, but it's also extremely harmful, because from this deficient self-image, we are told that there's some standard of external remediation process that will remediate us out of this deficient self-image and toward some end state of, let's say, use the word civilization, that we will become civilized. Or I'm even going to use the word enlightenment as an end stage of perfection. And I could include evolution, depending on how we want to use that term, as that it's a delayed way of an end state goal. And certainly it applies to our personal salvation and personal redemption. And so that is what I'm describing as the definition of inverse thinking, the belief that we're born into a deficient self-image that must be remediated by an external remediation process to some desired end state. And what happens there is that we're using consciousness, and consciousness produces perception. And then reality is relative to perception. And then there's no spiritual morality because it requires a conversion process. And a conversion process means to take away and replace, to take away and supplant. And that means that there will be people perpetually polarizing into adversary and conflict and warfare, because consciousness produces perception, reality is relative to perception, and people are only advocating for their own perception from their consciousness. And so there is no spiritual morality in colonialism, using conquest and power over and brute force and deception. Now, I'm using these terms as a conflict of interests. That means that this is destructive. It's win-lose, destructive, and death-producing. Win-lose is that nobody wins. It's I win and you lose, and winner take all, which is destructive and death-producing consequence for those outcomes and those we might call them the global crisis that is existing today. Now I turn to the thinking system of what I'm calling indigenous thinking system. And I'm using the word indigenous because we're all equally indigenous to the elements of earth, water, fire, and air. Each person's body is physically the element of earth. And then we're a container for 72% water. Then temperature in our body is the fire element. We also have the fire element in our brain synapse and also in our spine. We have positive and negative in our spine. We have the air element, our in-breath and out-breath. And then we all inclusively exist within the environmental earth, water, fire, and air. That means we are upon the sacred Mother Earth. Nahasan Hima is a living being. And then there are the oceans and the lakes and the river, the streams, and also the male rain and the female rain. There's the water upon the earth. We also find that the radiant sun is the fire element in the environment. And there is also the electricity in our homes, in our houses. There is also the fireplace, also the hearth, that's called fire by friction, in which we ignite a fire and keep it going with kindling and firewood or coal, and even pellets today. The modern fire is using pellets to keep warm in the household. And so we are the elements within our body of earth, water, fire, and air. And then we are existing in the earth, water, fire, and air. And I have to use a concept and a term from Sanskrit, which is called Akash. And this is the connectedness, the interrelatedness, the interconnectedness. I might say in English, the etheric metaphysic term is etheric network, or the common term is the web of life. And so in the Nepazad, we call that Ina. Ina is life itself. And we're not talking about life as it's abstract, but life that everything is alive and is a living being. And we have terms accordingly that resonate and that vibrate into the natural order, into that natural order laws in the language. And the names are important to know what things are called, because we don't wait for tomorrow, next day, next week, next millennium, next century. Everything is in the here and now. That is what affirmative is referring to. Affirmative is that we are existing in this essence and substance of love, and defining the air element, Nishdian, as the perfect love and peace of the sacred creator's breath, which is how we're making a sound and we're moving around. So we're existing within the cosmos, within the universe, and the four elements are existing within us, and we're existing within the earth, water, fire, and air. So that is what is an affirmation. We're not, as humans, making man-made laws to make it so someday, or we will design it to happen. It's already existing, and the focus here and the point here is that we're existing eternally in this sacred breath, in or out of the body, the perfect love and peace of Creator that is within us and around us, whether we're in the body or we have transitioned and ascended out of the body. These are the two thinking systems I have described. So reality is exact. In the indigenous affirmative thinking system, reality is exact in the natural order law. And so there's spiritual morality, because our decision making of yes and no is accordingly to, it is win-win with our genius gifts for our collective survival, to meet our basic needs, that is constructive and life affirming. And we eliminate the need for the win-lose and nobody wins, destructive and death-producing decisions for those outcomes and those consequences. That's the distinction between the two thinking systems.